I'm back, ready whenever you are.
Yeah, we can get started. They'll
Yeah,
they'll slowly join, and like I said, I'll download it and we'll get it uploaded, and anybody that missed a portion or all of it can go in there and watch it.
right. But I was saying about your YouTube, it gave me a few ideas. If you want, we can talk later
Yeah,
about maybe a collab or something.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Well, and then what I usually do too, if you like, after we talk about that, is in my description of my YouTube videos, which are basically all interviews. Usually, I have a couple like, other accounts, friend accounts to follow. So
mhm.
when you get yours up and going, I can put you down there as well as just
Yeah.
always be part of the description for people to go find you.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. I mean, I already have one, but like I said, it's barely making it. I really don't do much on YouTube because I'll be honest, I really don't know much about it. So I just watch on YouTube like you would, any show or any video,
Yeah.
but I really don't know much about uploading and being a YouTuber, if you want.
Yeah, I mean, we like I said, we could talk about that separately too, and I
Yeah.
can kind of give
Hmm.
you, I'm learning it on the fly as I go too, so, but I
Yeah,
could kind of let you know what I've been doing on that side of it.
right. Okay, sure. We'll definitely talk.
Okay, and for those that are watching again, thank you for joining. Today, I'm going to interview author Grace from my Between Authors podcast. And generally, Grace, what I usually like to do is I like to ask the author to just kind of introduce themselves to the viewers, and
Mhm.
it's as little or as much as you'd like to share on that side of it.
Well, my name is Grace. I've been writing for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years. And when I first started, I'm American. I'm also Lebanese. Um, I I speak English very, very well, but it is not my first language.
Hmm.
Even though I was raised here, um, because I do a lot of time abroad, so you kind of lose both. So I'm not fluent in any language I speak. Uh, when I first started writing, it was during the pandemic.
Hmm.
And so what turned out to be what started as just me having fun, exploring, turned out to be uh, a bestseller on Dreamy, And yeah, that's just me. I haven't
Yeah,
been
it's
writing
it's
long, but I love it. It's what I want to do.
yeah,
It's my passion.
yeah, and it's interesting because I think the pandemic is actually what got a lot of the current indie authors going, even though a lot of us maybe had written stuff a long time ago or started a long time ago. I think the pandemic is really what kind of ignited everybody to go
Because we
try it
had the
out, right? Get it
time.
going.
We had the time to do it.
Yeah,
We're always running
yeah,
around. Errands by themselves take forever. We were just on lockdown. And
yeah,
so that opened up this.
yeah. It's interesting too because you talked about being Lebanese as well, and every once in a while I like to talk about representation of stuff. Do you have any representation of that side, whether it's in your stories, whether it's maybe some background information or stuff on that side? Because again, for a lot of people, there sometimes isn't a lot of representation for certain nationalities and stuff. And is that something that you've looked at doing, or something maybe that just kind of happened naturally?
Um, Happen naturally, as in, you mean like, is there any kind of that culture in my books?
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to be American. First and foremost, I am American, but I'm also very Lebanese in a lot of my ways. And I wanted to bring light into how things are there. Lebanon is very westernized. It's a little different from the Middle East. It's very westernized. They're not desert. They're not. And I love being there. I go there for summer. It's half the time of my life. I go there for work. I mean, it's a very, very pleasant place for me, even though I don't have any family there.
Hmm.
So when I first started writing My Mate, and that's the first book in the series, there was nothing. It was all Americanized. It was and I was loving that. But then the thought came that I wanted to introduce something from my culture into that world. And so I named my MC's best friend. I gave him an Arabic name.
Hmm.
And then in the second book, I kind of expand on that where I don't know what I can say, where the story expands and it's more a lot more developed now. And so my book is about werewolves and packs. So now there's an Arab pack, there's an Indian pack, and so it's worldwide. And my main focus was on shedding the light on how people from there are. I did the character that's in the werewolf that's in charge of that area. I did a lot of research background, made sure that he lived up to how they are there. Like the way he speaks, the way he presents himself, it's very much Arabian.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't even know you were a werewolf sister because my book is werewolves as well.
Oh, is
I
it?
wasn't even aware that you wrote a werewolf book.
Yeah,
But
that's all I've
but
written so
that's
far.
great.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because a lot of times when you talk about representation, it doesn't have to be entirely, right? It doesn't have to be the entire book. It can just be that where you bring in some of the culture or some of the characters,
Right.
and that's something that I've tried to do too on the Latin side is make sure some of the characters are in there and have that representation
Right.
out there because again, a lot of times it's not seen, right? It's just not
Mhm.
out there for others to see, and it's just
Mhm.
something that people really appreciate when they do see it.
And Adrian, when you read a werewolf book, it's and I've read a lot. You don't really see. I mean, you've seen like Italian. I've read books where they different backgrounds, but it's never Lebanon or that part of
Yeah.
the world. So I want it to be something different and something that
Yeah.
ties into my background.
Yeah, and again, that's something I've always fully appreciated is when anybody, twists it a little, when somebody comes from a unique storyline and not, and again, even if it's the same storyline that we know, whether depending on the werewolf or whatever, it's always going to be unique. It's always going to be different, but it's just always just I just appreciate when it's just that different angle
Yeah.
and just bringing something new to it.
Yeah.
It's just for me, it's always been exciting. I love that in movies, books, everything. I always love that unique approach.
Yeah, me too. I love reading something different, even though I try to stick to, I don't try to stick, but I love romance. It's my favorite genre, obviously. And I do love werewolf books, so I'll definitely be giving your book a read. But I like to see something different.
Yeah.
I don't like the, and I think that's what got me writing werewolf is because do you know Dreamy? Have you heard of the app?
I've heard of it, yeah, but I don't think I've done anything with it or really seen what it does.
So Dreamy is a writing app, and when I was in, when we were in lockdown, I used to do a lot of reading there. It's an app that you download on your phone, just like Wattpad or Good Novel or all these apps. And I read on different apps, and for some reason, I chose to write there. But I've been reading all my life, and I've been doing a lot of werewolf reading on Dreamy for about 2 years, on and off. The stories all, and I don't mean to disrespect anybody. I don't mean all very brilliant stories, amazing authors. I'm not, but they all seem to have a lot of similarities,
Yeah.
and that's why I wanted to create the something different.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't a lot of times it's the same thing, but they're all unique, so you appreciate that. But that was the same thing I wanted to do is I didn't want my werewolf to have a full moon. I didn't want it to have to be a curse or a bite that did it. So I went completely away from that for that reason. And it's interesting is you and I went more toward the pack side,
Uh-huh.
and usually you see more of the pack side really lately more when it's the werewolf romance,
Yeah,
which is more when you talk about the packs, but generally when it's just a werewolf book, they
yeah.
don't touch on the packs as much, right? And it's interesting that both of you and I did that. We kind of went away from that norm because as much as I love it, as much as I appreciate it, I just wanted something different.
It's funny you should say that. Oh, oops. Because I don't focus on the bite or the full moon. I don't even. I have a moon goddess in my, but that's not how you turn. That's not how you. There is no. So there's a lot of similarities there, and I do focus a lot on the pack and the importance of the pack.
Yeah.
And I had to do a lot of research because, like I said, I didn't want it to sound just like any story I'd read, you know?
Yeah.
So I went back and did a lot of research on the moon goddess and Selene and all the names and where they come from, what they mean, while writing, you know? And so, yeah, that's very important for me to create something different.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you mean by not the bite or the full moon, you know, your original every romance book. Sorry, werewolf book.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really, you know, yeah, I'm going to ask you a question in a minute in terms of your influences, right? But my influence really is horror movies. And I'm old enough where I've seen the original Universals, the Hammer ones in the 70s, to all the new stuff, right? So I have, 100 years of horror, movies that I've kind of watched and seen. But, and that's the thing is, it's usually the same story, right? One of the things, as much as I love horror, one of the things that you always see is it's sometimes always the same formula, right? Like the dad dies and the mom and the kids are moving away, and right, they just happen to rent a house or buy a house that's demonic or possessed. You like, it's always the same storyline. And you're like,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
even when it's well done, you're like, just try to pivot to something a little different, but you still appreciate it because they're well written, they're well done.
Right.
And horror, even when it's bad, is just fun, right? It's just a fun,
Yeah.
entertaining thing. But yeah, that's, I think, because my main influence and background is horror. I really wanted to say, I just want something a little different. I just
So
want
do
that
you
slight
write
turn.
romance, werewolf romance or horror?
No, I wrote it. I'm more in the horror side, but I'm more on the old school horror side. It's kind of in the style of some of the older ones where there's gore and stuff in there, but it's not on the newer
Right.
style, right? I mean,
Mhm.
even my cover, I wanted my covers, actually all my covers, I like to have that old 50s movie poster look that you used to see in the drive-ins and stuff like that. I just appreciate all that old style, the vintage look.
Oh, very
So I went more on that side of it. But yeah, I honestly, I wrote a romance short story, but for me, I can't wrap my hands around the werewolf romance. I can't get into to write it in that direction. For me,
nice.
it's separate because I love the horror so much. I want to emphasize the monster part of it,
Mm.
and I can't get the romance and the monster to get together on that side.
Well, here's something for you. So in my book, my MC is called Zane, and he and his werewolf are one person. So they're actually two different characters, but in one body, and they communicate in the mind. So he actually talks to Hunter. So Hunter would be Zane's werewolf. So inner werewolf. Then they communicate through the mind. So when I'm writing those scenes, the romantic scenes, it's actually the person, not the wolf. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah. No, I
Um,
understand completely.
yeah. So but I understand your point of view, how you just can't wrap your mind around it, you know? I think it's because I've done so much werewolf reading that I wanted to give them that. Like, I wanted
Yeah,
to create a romance in that fictional world,
yeah.
a
It's
spicy.
by the one I'm writing right now. I just sent out to the beta readers. It's I'm not even sure where you classify it, but it's a mixture of erotic horror, dark, dark, dark romance because it's very dark.
I have to read
And that
it.
one's
I'm
there's
intrigued right now.
that one has a demon. There's a demon is the main character. So you have that aspect, but it's very over the top in terms of being dark and being spicy. It just went
I'm here
completely
for it.
right turn on that side.
I'm here for it. I promise you. I'm into the dark girl, dark romance. I'm a dark romance girly. I love that. I love writing it, love reading it. However, I do like to pivot away sometimes and give my mind a break and do read maybe some fantasy.
Hmm.
Um, or just something easy, like easy to grasp, if you will.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
that goes to the question I did want to ask you is I usually like to ask the authors their influences, right? And
Hmm.
by influences, it doesn't necessarily have to be books and authors because I always like to say an author's voice is pretty much everything, your environment, how you grew up, what you liked, and it could be music, it could be movies, it could be art itself.
Mm.
What is that influence for you or influences creatively that kind of spark what you love? And like you said, you love dark romance, you do like
Mhm.
fantasy. What are those influences that have kind of just spark your creativity when you want to do something?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I want to say something, Adrian. I think that the way we are brought up has a lot to do with what influences us in life, what we write about, how we think. I grew up in a very nice, loving family. I've always loved romance. I saw the romance in everything. When anywhere we went, even when I was little, I would see the beauty in things. I loved watching my parents
Hmm.
growing up, how kind they were to one another uh, at a certain time. I think what influenced me, I've always wanted to be a writer. Always. Ever since I was little, I wanted to be a writer and I would read a lot. A lot of things can influence a person: music, TV, movies, other authors. Um, I like the classics. I like the old, but I never found the romance in them. For example, Pride and Prejudice. I would have loved to see a Pride and Prejudice written. Excellent book, my favorite read of all time, always will be. Favorite movie. But I would have loved to read them together romantically, So I was always missing that. So yeah, I get influenced by nature, by people around me, by movies, music. For an author, for a person that is, because I believe I was destined to write, for a person that is destined to do something, you will see the little, I don't know how I'm trying to, the little things here and there, and everything sparks back to, oh, if it was done that way, or I would have written it that way, or this should have happened. So everything influences me. I will be at the supermarket and just watching everything, and a scene will click in my mind, like a shopping scene, or because we are writing characters in real life,
Yeah.
and just the sounds that you hear. Everything influences an author. Conversations with family, conversations with my boy, with family members can influence that spark. All you need is a spark and an idea to influence a certain scene.
Yeah, and that you're absolutely correct on that. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it because writing is like any form of art, right? Like just like you said, whether it's music, whether it is art, it's that
Hmm.
connection to it, right? The connection that the viewer, the reader, even the writer, that connection to that story, to those characters, to what's being put on
Yeah.
the page in the music, and and that's the beautiful thing about it is you do get those inspirations from any and everywhere, and
Hmm.
I completely agree with you in terms because like I said I have written a short story romance that I did, and I'm very similar to you. Is I my grandparents were married 52 years before they both passed away, like within a year of each other, and you get to see that. You get to see that beauty and
Hmm.
how they interact, right? And I've been married for a while, and I have a beautiful wife, and our interactions, right? So you have those, you have that background to
Hmm.
pull from, to lean on, and
Hmm.
and it goes really to like you said, it's your environment, how you were brought up,
Yeah.
what was around you, and then the things you like, right? And that's always good when you don't, like you said, I need a break. I'll go read some fantasy. When
Right.
you do branch out, it gives you that breath of something to pull from, right? Different aspects
Hmm.
of things to pull
Hmm.
from, and it's why I just love indie authors or authors in general, is because there is no restrictions. There is no limit to what you can do. You can take it any direction you
Right.
want. Like you and I said, I don't want the same normal werewolf story. I'm going to take it this way, and the
Right.
beauty is you can, right? You can do that.
Hmm. with the right audience,
Yeah.
you can do anything you want. And like I said, if you're destined for something, um, the little things here and there will always spark your. Somebody wrote a comment that said, "Book scenes come at us at the craziest time." Yes, that's so true. Sometimes I'll be in the car, and because of this very incident, now I carry a notebook wherever I go because I have to jot it down, and I'll get this idea. You know, if you don't write it down right away, it's gone. So
Yeah.
now I try to keep a notebook with me, even if I have to just quickly jot it down, you know, to try to remember what I was thinking. Because yes, at the craziest times, you might get an idea for, she said it this way, or he said it that way, or a scene, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm so grateful that as an author that I have the opportunity to create. And I always want to create something different. I don't want to fall in the lines of, you said something earlier about the movies. It feels like we watch, whether it's in every genre, all movies are one movie. They just add different things to them. You know,
Unfortunately,
all
yes.
are one movie. You just add, you know, you change the name, you add a different, but it's all the same. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful to have the mindset where I want to be original. I want to be different. You know, get out of
Yeah.
the box.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And it's a good point because my werewolf book is very interesting because it came from an image in my head. There's actually an image from, for anybody who has read it, it's the bonfire scene. And if when you do read it, you'll understand what scene that is. But that was just an image in my head, just a picture, almost like I was looking at a painting. And I said, I love that image, right? So I said, okay, I wrote the scene from that image. And that scene actually led me to another scene. And then from that point, you know, because I'm not a plotter, I really don't even sometimes write chronologically.
Hmm.
I wrote a bunch of things and I built it from that, right? And it was really just from the one image. It just kind of from that point, it just kind of
It
kept
wrote
sparking,
itself.
and it
It's
just
like,
kept going, right?
mhm.
And it's very true. It could be just something that clicks, and you go, wait a minute, this is what I want to do. This makes sense. This is where I want to take it.
That's funny you should say that because one of my favorite scenes in my first book is a bonfire. And the bonfire was, it was something from my past growing up and actually going to a bonfire. But because of that memory, I wanted to recreate it in this book. And it happened unintentionally. I was thinking like they need something, so a bonfire, because that bonfire that I lived, that bonfire night was so amazing that I recreated it in the book. And till this day, it is one of the best chapters written in my first book. Love it. So we do have a lot of similarities in our writing.
Yeah, it's very interesting
Weird. Yeah.
how many different directions we have that it kind of linked
Mhm.
up like that.
Mhm.
I definitely am going to need to read yours as well because again, I appreciate going the different directions like that.
Yeah.
Um, so right now you have the one book out, or do you have more than the one book?
So when I first started writing on Dreamy, like I said, I was just fooling around. And then within 2 months, an editor contacted me and said, "We want to give you a contract, blah, blah, blah." And I definitely I signed the contract, not even, you know, and it blew up. My Mate took off. I wrote My Mate, and then My Mate, My Hope, and then The Alpha's Rival Mate. And that's one series. And
Okay.
now I started my fourth book, but it's totally different. It's not even werewolf. It's more mafia
Okay.
because I wanted to. I don't know why I'm intrigued with that. There are so many mafia movies. I'm not gonna that are intriguing, but I cannot watch them because of just certain things. I'm very much like that. If the character doesn't, if I don't agree with the character or if something's off, I won't watch it. But I have been intrigued to that genre, so that's what I'm writing in my fourth book. So I have three books, and one is published and out, as in one of the first. So the first book was divided into two parts, book one and book two. Now, the good thing about writing for a platform is they take care of all the business deals, all the, but sometimes things like I wanted, so this is book one, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And the continuation of it is this. I would have made it one book, and I'm just being totally, you know, transparent right now. I would have kept it one book, but they insisted on dividing it into two
Splitting it.
books. So this is actually one book that I have out, and my book two, which is My Mate, My Hope, the second in the series, comes out. I want to say this month, but I don't have an exact date, to be honest. Again, because I am working with another company. So
Okay.
the editors, the producers.
Yeah, and definitely when it does come out, let me know and tag me when you start posting stuff so
Oh,
I can get it out there and share it as well
yeah.
too for you.
But all three books, whether it's My Mate, My Hope, or The Apple's Rival Mate, they're all on the Dreamy. They're all on that app, but they're not edited on that app. So to
Okay.
buy the book, the edited version, you would need the Amazon. Like,
Okay. On the Mafia series, the one that you're writing on that side, no werewolves at all, right? Completely separate from
up
that.
till now, no. Every once in a while I keep thinking, should I throw in a werewolf?
You
I
know,
do. It's my favorite, but no, I'm trying to stay away from it for this book.
again, it's very interesting because I do have a story idea that it's a short story idea right now, but I actually might go full out with it. And you have the mafia, but you have the cartel side, right? You have more of the Mexican Latin side of it,
Right.
and on that side, the hitmans are called sicarios, right? Which are the ones that go out and kill. I have an idea that I've been thinking about where they are werewolves, right? They're the ones that they send out to do the
And
killing when
there's
they
your
need the
passion right
hitch.
there. It keeps coming back. You can't, you know.
It's just
I wonder if that's a downfall or not. Sometimes I think it's because I keep thinking of werewolves. I'm like, no, I should be able to write something else. You know, is
yeah.
that what do you think? Is that a
It
downfall?
happens because what's interesting. It's interesting is it's such a great character, right? The actual the core of the character is such a great character. There's so much you can do with it, and that was another thing. That was for me. I don't know if it's the same for you, but for me, I always was kind of didn't understand why I was never a bigger character, right?
Mhm.
Because you have Dracula and the vampires and Frankenstein, and all of those that really are the more the bigger characters, and the werewolf was always a secondary character. It's always like the sidekick sometimes, or the hitman, right? It's always just the thug in the back,
Right.
the muscle for it. But it's such a great character, core character, and one of the things is there's another author, Gregory Alexander Sharp, who also wrote werewolf books, and his take place in Italy. But he's the one that said this. I never like to take credit for it, but
Hmm.
both him and I are both huge Hulk fans, right? We love Hulk from Marvel. And really, when you think about it, the werewolf really is the same character. It's that core aggression, that core rage,
Meathead.
the person that doesn't want to turn. Sometimes, a lot of times, they don't want to be, right. They're trying to avoid turning in some of the stories, and it's very similar to Hulk. It's just that raw aggression that is let
Self-control.
out.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. I think what happens is because it's such a great foundation for a character, there is so many things you can do with it. And sometimes when you're thinking a story, you just automatically think this would be great in that, right? Luckily, right after my werewolf, I wrote a zombie book to keep it completely separate. But I do have all these little short story ideas with werewolves that I've just thought of. That
Hmm.
it's just a great character. It's a great character to get out
It's a
there.
great character to write. It's a great
Yeah.
fictional, to write. And I totally agree with you. Werewolves, even in movies like or books like, because the books were a lot better, the Twilight books, the werewolves were not, with all their greatness, with all their magnificent, they weren't taken seriously. Were it was always the Volturi and the vampires, but werewolves have always been intriguing because of the monster inside.
Hmm.
And I think, Adrian, it has a connection to us as human beings and what we go through inside because we are all going through something. We all
Yep.
have our battles, we all have our demons, if you will. And
Yep.
so writing those characters, you can kind of unleash that. and take something that you are going through, even the most minor thing that you're going through, and I'll give you an example in a minute, and expand on it. It is so overwhelming. It is so fulfilling, overwhelming and fulfilling to write and to see on paper. There is in the first series, in the second book in the series, there's a breakup. Minor breakup, nothing major. But yeah, there is a breakup for a short time. And I was going through something like that in my life. Not necessarily me, but there was a breakup in my, somebody was going through a breakup in my life at that time. And it was so releasing to write.
Yeah.
All the emotions came out on that paper. And if you read till this day, ARCs and readers, friends, family will say that chapter is so well written because I was going through it. And so that's the connection with the werewolf. We all have our demons.
Yeah.
Whether it's you saying something to your child that you regret later on, or maybe parents, a relationship with whatever it is, we are all going through something. That's the werewolf in us. That's the demon, that's the monster that we are trying to control. So writing werewolves intrigues me because for that very reason, it helps you connect to yourself.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen it. There's a podcast called Werewolf the Podcast. And it's two werewolf writers, two other authors that are out here, and it's probably one of the funniest things. It's a mixture of horror, it's a mixture of action, but they both are so funny with the way they do it, and it's just sometimes so over the top.
It's
And
a
it's like
podcast.
every week, yeah, it's on. You can get it on Spotify,
Interesting.
any of the different things. It's called Werewolf the Podcast, and
Interesting.
it is possibly just one of the funniest things you'll ever hear. At the same time, being the goriest. I mean, it's just a great thing. If you love werewolves, it's just the greatest thing to listen to. I think he's already up to almost 200 episodes, and every week he kicks out an episode. They're probably like 30 minutes long, and they're just great, right? So anybody
Really
who
interesting. I
appreciates
would love.
werewolf,
Mhm.
yeah, you should check it out. It's Spotify for sure, but any Apple Podcasts, any of the
Yeah.
ones that have it,
But
it's
now I
it's
have an
just the
idea for
greatest.
our collab. We definitely need to do something werewolf.
Okay, yeah, well, we'll definitely talk about that
Yeah.
after because I am interested in that.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you never checked it out, you should at least check out one or
I've
two.
never even heard of it.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely will.
Um, so you're talking about writing the mafia book right now, right? And
Hmm.
and you did talk about a couple other things in terms of how you love romance, you love fantasy in there, right? So like most of us, we have just a ton of stories that we're thinking of, or
Hmm.
partially written, or notes, or whatever. You know, have you thought about going into fantasy at some point? Have you thought about writing a romance um, story at some point? And when I talk about that, almost everything we write have multiple aspects, right? You have almost so many genres within a
Right.
story, right? You have the main one, but you have aspects of everything.
Right.
But have you ever thought and really said, at some point I do want to maybe write something in that genre or do something in that genre?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, romance is my favorite, but sometimes it can get a little, you know, you can get bored just doing the same thing over and over, and you need something, different. So that's why I said I would like to pivot into another genre. Horror is not, I can't write horror because I'm not, I mean, I take my hat off to people that can because I think those are the hardest books to write. You're creating scenes and you're implementing fear in a person. I don't know if I can do that. It's a little triggering for me. Um, but definitely mystery. So what's right after horror would be like something suspenseful
Yeah.
or mystery, definitely. But I don't know if I would write total like no romance at all. No, it would have to have some kind of spicy romance in it.
Yeah.
And that's, Adrian, it's the same thing. What you just said is absolutely right. Even in my book, even though it is a romance book, it has espionage in it, there's war in it, there's unaliving, it is full of everything. There's mystery in it. So like you said, even every genre can have a little bit of everything. So yeah, absolutely. I am thinking of doing mystery, maybe fantasy, but definitely keeping the romance, you know?
Yeah. Yes, it's funny because the dark romance that I wrote, that's with betas, is my wife said, "Why don't you do a romance?" Because I did do a short story, right? So there's a short story I have that's only ebook, but she's like, "Why don't you write a romance?" Because I did, my werewolf book, I did the zombie book, so she's like, "Why don't you write a romance?" But again, I'm so into the horror elements, the
Yeah.
monster elements, that my dark romance is a succubus demon, a serial unaliver,
There's
and another
always
character.
something yeah,
I
that's,
just I had to take it that direction, just so
yeah.
just completely to the right. But yeah, it is. You have the aspects of the romance, but it's just
You
so
don't
much
lose it. You're
crazy
always,
stuff
yeah.
going.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So, how dark do you mean dark? When you say dark romance, is it because we have, I mean, Book Talk and what they mean by
Yeah,
dark romance. So, is it Book Talk dark or like even at another level where
it's so it's a good question. So one of the things I sent to the beta readers is, what would you classify this as? Because
hmm
I'm a little, I think it's a tweener where it may be a little more on erotic horror,
hmm
um, with aspects of dark. That's why I always say dark romance,
Yeah, that when you
because
say dark, that's why I asked that question. How
yeah,
dark is it?
because
I'm
it's the
intrigued.
main characters. The main two characters is the serial unaliver and the succubus demon. Right, those are the main two that are working their way through the story, with a third character that comes in a little later.
Uh-huh.
Each of my chapters is titled after the victim of the chapter, right? So every
Oh,
chapter, there's
interesting.
somebody that gets taken out, with these two crazy people. One's a person, the other one's not. These two crazies going through the story. So every chapter is generally named after the victim of that chapter, with some not because, you're moving through the story, but there's a lot of death in there. There's a lot of stuff that's happening throughout the story. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not sure where it really
So, so
classifies
what you
itself.
so what you mean by dark is the aspect of the death or unaliving, not necessarily the dark as in I don't know what we can say on here, what we can't because of all the rules and regulations, but not the sexual.
That's pretty in there too. I mean,
Okay.
it's
I'll have
pretty
to read your
on the
book.
other side.
Like
I'll
I'm
send
not
you. I just
taking.
did the beta copy, so I'll send you the beta after this. We'll talk about it.
Okay, for
I'll
sure.
send it over to you. But
Very
yeah,
interesting.
it's again, I wanted to do it. It's my first time writing in this side,
Uh-huh.
story wise, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go over the top. I'm just gonna take it.
And you
This
should.
demon is just crazy, and I'm
Yes.
taking it over the top, right?
That's what
So
I love. If you're gonna write a demon, go all out. Make him all the demon you can. If you're gonna write romance, go out there and write the dirtiest. Well, you know what I mean by romance, like those scenes.
yeah.
Write it the dirtiest way you can. And with that being said, it's funny, Adrian. I cannot. There are certain things I can't write or read. Are you like that? For example, I don't like the cheating trope. I don't
Yeah,
like RAPE.
yeah.
Anything like that in a book. Mm-mm.
And see, that's the thing. Unfortunately, there is some in there because it is a serial
Right.
unaliver and it is the
Dark,
succubus demon,
dark,
right?
dark,
So
dark, dark.
yeah, so I do have, there's a lot of trigger warnings, and I do put that in front and say, just be aware that, because I do know that is difficult for some people,
Mm-hmm.
but if I didn't have it, it wouldn't really be true to the characters, because these two characters are just
Crazy.
they're out there, right? So
Well, see, I would if I was reading a book and that came on. It's not like I'm going to throw away the book. I will continue reading the book, and I would never base my review or my on that scene. No, no, no. I will continue reading it, but it's not something that I look for. So I don't
yeah,
look for the cheating
no,
tropes
I
or
can.
the
Yeah.
You know, the
I
abuse.
completely agree. I mean, I had the same problem in my zombie book because I gave all the trigger warnings too. And, I don't know if mine is one of the few, but I do have infants and children that are killed and eaten because it's an apocalypse. It's going to happen, right? And I was like, to be true to the story and what's going on,
Mhm.
unfortunately, there's infants and kids and children that are getting
Unfortunately.
taken out, or you're
Mhm.
finding, them in just horrible shape because they
Mhm.
were already taken out, right? And there were some people that are like, I can't do it, I can't read it. And I go, I completely understand. I go, but again, to be true to
It
the
fits
story,
in with
you
the.
have to have it, right? It
And
has to be
here's the
there.
thing, in our world today, it is a problem.
Yeah,
So you're writing something that maybe in one way or another does we see it every day. We see, I don't want to talk about it right now, but we see these
yeah,
things all day with trafficking and things like that. So yes, it's triggering, but it's also something that we're dealing with on a daily basis, unfortunately.
yeah,
And so to read it in a book is just, I think as an author, we kind of understand each other, but readers sometimes, I got threats. I got death threats for something I wrote once. I kid you not. And it was something really not that big of a deal. But like I said, as authors, we understand each other's different. We understand each other different. We understand each other. We kind of comprehend where our work. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Whereas for a reader, what in the hell was she thinking? What were you this? What was this author is insane? You know what I mean? It's happening in our world today, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
it's going to happen in the
And
book.
and it really goes back to, the trigger is different for everybody. And you have to respect that something can trigger somebody to not
Mhm.
to just, flip out or not want to see it. And you have to respect that because unfortunately something that's lacking just overall in society today is empathy. And you got to understand that some people just have certain things that you don't know what they've gone through, right? And there's a
Exactly.
reason they have that trigger,
Exactly.
and you have to respect that. And
Yeah.
and when they were telling me I can't finish, I was like, I completely understand. I have no problem with that. I don't
Mhm.
want you to read through something that
It's
is
going to
triggering.
traumatize you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the same thing with this one. I make sure that's on the trigger warnings. I like, just be prepared. These characters are bad characters, right? They're
Yeah.
on that other side, and they're
Yeah.
gonna do things that just are not, stomachable for a lot of people.
So
But
when you
that's
say,
what they are.
so when you say trigger warnings, is this in your book or
I have
you
the page at
connected
the
it?
front and just saying, look,
Oh,
these are everything that you're gonna come in contact with, so before you start reading it,
that's
these are some of
interesting.
the things you're gonna hit.
Yeah. So I don't have that in my book, but what I do is I put it as a description. Like when you click the link, you'll
Yeah,
see, I put the warning
on
there.
that side.
Like I said, I was an amateur. This is the first book I ever wrote, and I was just fooling around. Never really thought of making a trigger, but this isn't that gory. I mean, yeah, it has a lot of sexual content and immature content in it, but so does every dark romance book. However, for the book that I'm writing now and for the book that I am editing to publish, which is the second in the series, I think that's what I'm going to do
Yeah.
because I want to avoid what I went through with her being with the death threats that I got,
And it's probably the right thing to do is just say, just be aware that this is going to be in this, because again, they may not want to purchase it, they may not even want to
Yeah,
start it
yeah,
if they're aware of it, right? And you rather not somebody spend money for it and pick it up and just like, I
yeah,
can't do this. At least they know ahead of time, okay, I kind of told you this was coming, so
yeah.
you know you
And
you
that
were
would lead
pre-warned.
to so many things. It could lead to a review that doesn't sit
Yeah,
right with you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm going to do that for the second book. Thank you.
yeah. And I think the only reason I did it is because, again, even in the zombie book with the infants and the children's getting eaten, I was like, okay, some of these things are very heavy for people, so
Yeah,
it's just going to be better for me to call it out. Let me just let you know ahead of time
yeah,
this is coming, so you're not, surprised when that starts to happen.
I'm
For
seeing a
that
lot
reason,
of that.
I don't want anybody to just get blindsided. So what am I reading?
Right. Yeah. I had a problem with my mate. So because I started writing on the app, and so I started writing, I want to say in January, and by May I was finished because again we were in lockdown. There wasn't anything to do. I was done with the book, already editing it, and I had somebody. But when I would upload the chapters onto Dreamy before finding out that it was going to get published, and I won an award, 3 awards for this book. So before it even blew up and became huge, I was just uploading these chapters on an app, no recollection of how big it would get. Well, one day this woman says, I wish you the best. She was very nice about it. And I respect all comments, all reviews, all opinions. But I can't read your book anymore. And I'm like, I wanted to know why. Like, what was it that triggered her? Um, so I asked her to talk to me private. And it turns out it was because the girl was 17 and there was some, just nothing major, but just some foreplay, if you want.
Yeah,
But she was 17 and I guess not of age, and it triggered her. Something small as that,
definitely.
caused a. Um, I thought about for a second. I thought about going back and changing it, but then I didn't because I wanted it to be more authentic. I wanted it to be me
Yeah.
and not base my writing off of them. But I did apologize to her, and we each went our ways. She didn't continue reading the book, and I respect.
And that's the thing, it's interesting when you read these things or hear these things about authors flipping out on reviewers or reviews, and you have to remember and you have to understand you're not going to appeal to 100%.
Oh,
I don't care what you do, what it is you put out there. People are going to hate it, and some people will love it, right?
yeah,
You're not going to get 100% of the people to
absolutely.
like or appreciate it, right?
And
So
if you're
if you
not,
get a bad review, it's just going to happen. I mean,
yeah,
and if you think about it, just think about your normal life. You hear sometimes movies or music that people love, and you're like, I hate that. I can't stand it.
right,
And
right.
that's what it is. You're not gonna. It's not gonna appeal to everybody.
Well, we
You
were
can't
just
expect it to.
talking about how werewolves are not the most popular. However, they're the most popular books
Yeah,
in the romance, well, not the most popular, but they're very popular books. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it just goes to show you that sometimes a bad review can can make you popular. And a friend of mine, actually, another author, told me that a bad review. It takes one bad review to make you popular. So no, I never let reviews discourage me, or I actually want them, but good or bad, leave a review. That's what I'm always telling the readers. Good, just an honest review.
yeah,
But everybody's entitled to their opinion. Everybody has their, like you said, everybody's battling something. So I respect that.
yeah.
Here's the thing with writers. So let me ask you this: what is the hardest job as a writer,
It's
as an indie author?
yeah. It's the marketing. It's finding your audience, right? That's the
How
thing.
do you get people to understand, like they love the book and they want the book and they're buying the book and you've won awards for this book? How do you actually get them to leave a review? It's marketing is so hard nowadays. And
It's
please
it's
leave a
almost
review.
impossible because on my werewolf book, I did two separate occasions for the free ebook, right? And between the two, I think I had almost 300 downloads, right? And I think maybe I picked up three reviews for the
Yeah,
300 downloads. You're like,
yeah.
you
What
would
is it?
think
Is it that
maybe
people don't?
10%, give me 10% of it.
I honestly believe that it is okay. So on Dreamy, again, because that's where I first started writing, I noticed that I have like about 2 million followers on there. So it's a very popular series. But I noticed that the majority of the followers, readers, are at an age group where, you know, I'm going to say middle aged. A lot of them don't know, including myself. If you told me a year ago to go leave a review, I'd be like, where, what, what's good review? What is What is Amazon? How do you leave a review on Amazon? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I never really, I think it's really just knowledge, how
Yes.
to, where to go for, at least for me, because of the, the age level of the people reading.
And then, the other aspect, and it's just part of it, is sometimes people are lazy. They're lazy and they're busy, right? And you're like, I finished. I need to go do something. You're like, it takes a minute, but I don't have that minute. I don't have that minute to go think what I want to say and put the review.
Yeah.
It's life, unfortunately,
It can
right?
be
Some people just
complicated
don't
for
have the time.
It
Yeah.
can be complicated for most. Yeah. I've had people say, "Oh, I couldn't find your book on Amazon. The link doesn't work." And they get frustrated.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Yeah. But ideally, like I wish as authors, we could find a way to market easier and get
I
those
know.
reviews. That's the hardest thing for an author.
But and that goes to kind of why I do this and why I try to share everybody's work, right? If I see
Mm-hmm.
somebody's post, I share it out there, right? And the reason I do it is it doesn't matter how many followers I have, right? If I have,
Mm-hmm.
say, 500 only, and the other person has 100,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? If my 500 are not the same
Oh yeah.
500 that's 500 new viewers of their book. Give me
Right.
one
Hmm.
second.
Are you getting an invite or something?
No, I'm getting the little puzzle that says, "Are you guys still there?" It has to
Oh.
do a thing to make sure you didn't fall asleep or pass
Oh.
out when you're doing the live or something. But um, and I lost my train of thought. What we were talking about. Uh,
Reviews and having time and making the time for them and
yeah, I mean, it's just it's the thing about when you share something again. Like I said, it doesn't matter how many one has or the other has
followers.
if they're
Yeah.
not the same, right? And really, what you're trying to do is just eyes on your product because everybody's book and I don't honestly from my heart I don't care how the book is written or what the story is. There's an audience for that, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
the point is, can you find them and can they find you? That's the biggest issue for all authors, right? Indie
Yeah.
authors and even traditionally published. Can you find that audience? Because even if you're with somebody that's promoting it to a certain group, it might not be the audience that's really looking for your work. And that's the biggest struggle always is can you
Right.
find that audience for your work? They're there, they're out there, they're looking for what you wrote
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking for them, but sometimes it just never connects and never crosses. And that's the struggle. That's the
And that's
biggest
why
struggle for
what you're
indie authors.
doing, that's why what you're doing is so important because you're connecting. You're connecting people, readers to authors, authors to other authors. Um, who would have guessed that we have so much in common?
Yeah.
Like you're just someone who I wanted to reach out to, or you reached out and look, we have so much in common. I never thought you would write werewolf. I thought it was, I knew it was horror, but not werewolf horror. The thing with the audience is, let's talk Book Talk. Book Talk has how many billion people on it? Just on Book Talk.
it's yeah
Huge,
it's
huge.
enormous.
However, a lot of books don't get seen ever. And that's what's a little aggravating, I want to say, or upsetting, is that some books are not given the chance.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking my books. I'm talking there are some really good books out there, regardless of the genre. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
dark romance for Book Talk, that are just never seen. I know an author that writes incredible books. Her style of writing, and I'm sure you know her, her style of writing is phenomenal. M.K. Dockery.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
then there's April Grace. She's also an author that does amazing work. You never really see their books on here. Myself, I'm just barely getting out there. I was like shocked when someone said, "Oh my God, I've been seeing your book a lot, and it's in my TBR." I'm like, "Really? You have?" You don't see there are so many good indie authors out there
Yeah.
that just are not given the chance, and that's why I wanted, when you said let's do this, I was like, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime an author or
And
reader wants, I'm there.
yeah, and the thing is again when you talk about book talk, it's not nothing against it, but sometimes it's the same 30 books. It's the same 30 books that you see everybody talking about, everybody reading, and they're great books, or they're probably great books. I haven't read everything, but
Right. Right.
you go. That's the thing, is like there is no breaking away sometimes from that. Everybody you follow or see, they're talking about the same ones that the other ones read, and you don't see that. So
Mhm.
the beautiful thing about it is there is a movement for a lot of book talkers or other indie authors supporting
Mhm.
indie authors and getting more stuff out there, right? And
Mhm.
that's really what this is just sharing, because the more you share each other's work, the more you like it, the more you comment, the more you save, the more the algorithm understands you're there, right? They start seeing, okay, these are people that we should pay attention to. The
Mhm.
algorithm's not going to do that if your work is not getting shared or saved. So that's why I'll do that as many times as I can. If I see somebody's work, I'm sharing it for
Mhm.
that reason, because that's the only way the algorithm understands that's somebody that people wants to see, that wants to see their videos.
Mhm.
And the other thing is, and why I love doing this, and really why I continue doing this, is we talked a little bit about it earlier, and really it's the connection to the reader and the story, right?
Mhm.
And you mentioned a good point, is that if we hadn't talked, we wouldn't have known how much similarities we have.
Mhm.
And that's the point I do this, because it's no longer the name behind the book, it's the author, the person, right? And when people get to see why you wrote that, or what your influences are, or why you do this, or why you love this, that connection gets even stronger to that reader, because they know who you are. They understand where those stories came from, why they came,
Mhm.
or what impacted your life for them to come through. And as
Mhm.
soon as you strengthen that connection to the readers for that, or they have that connection, it's just so much more that's going to
Enticing.
happen between the reader and your book, right? And
Right.
that's the beauty of this, because a lot of us as indie authors, we may see each other on another post, or see a comment, or say hello, or share somebody, and just say thank you or whatever. But a lot of times we're not really talking. But when you get this and you can actually talk,
Mhm.
I love this, because I get to see you as a person. I get to
Up
see
close and
why
yeah.
you do that, right?
Mhm.
It's a beautiful thing for me personally.
Absolutely, absolutely agree. And that's what that's why when I don't know if you've noticed, but I will repost, I like, I share, on my page there are a lot of other authors, um, especially the ones that are not seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If we can create, we already have a beautiful community. Book Talk is, I am so grateful for Book
It's
Talk. I love
it's
it. It's
incredibly
amazing,
supportive.
huge, very supportive. But if we can create a community within Book Talk that helps support, and I mean everybody, not just the Book Talk famous books. And I appreciate those, and I read them. I picked up several books because of Book Talk. Some of them I like, some of them I'm like, what the hell was the hype about? You know, we are each entitled to our opinion. But if we can create a community inside the community where we support each other, like what you're doing right now, that's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
it is incredible, because there's a couple of authors that I deal with every day. That are friends. We have a thing called the share team, right? And it's basically, if you put a post, we're all going to share it. And again, that's part of that smaller community, to just share everybody's work, right? So if one of us posts something, that entire group's going to share it out there, so other
mhm,
people can see it.
yeah,
And there's another author, Bonita Gutierrez, who also wrote a werewolf book.
I believe she was.
Her and I did a
I
thing
believe.
called, C.H. Reese. She put
Mhm,
share team there. She's one of the ones.
mhm,
She's a great author as well. That's very supportive. But Bonita and I did a
mhm.
thing called Latinx Indie Author Alliance, to just share other Latino authors, because it's the same problem. You don't see them. They're out there, but you don't see their books. You don't see their work. And
Yeah,
we're like, just tag each other. Just share your work. You got to get yourself in the
send
algorithm.
them my way. I
Just
am
get it
always
out there.
ready to share, repost. Sometimes I'll duet. You know, even for narrators, I have met some of the
Yeah.
most amazing narrators. I duet their work. I'm a supportive person. I am that one to come to share your story. I got it. Buy your book. It'll always be me. You know, regardless of, I don't do it to get the same thing back. That's just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And here, this brings up an important, not really a question, but a topic in the segment, if you want. How do you stay away? So I'm a person that is very, I get affected by what's going on in the world. And because I am originally from a certain part of the world, I get affected by news on there or what's going on. I don't want to go into detail. But
Yeah.
how do you, and if it's not you specifically, but what advice would you have for someone like me who's very passionate about humanity and humanitarian? I'm a humanitarian. I was raised by humanitarians. To stay away from that because you will get a
It's
lot of backlash. You make
yeah,
one post and you will lose,
automatically, yeah.
possibly gain, but definitely lose. And I don't want. I'm against any kind of hate, any kind of terrorism. I'm an author. We write about love. I'm a romance author. I want love all over the world. I want peace. I want, ideally in a perfect world, I wish things could go the way I want, and that would be world peace, no hunger things. But I do get affected by it. I do get affected by it. And sometimes I post things and then I'm having to take it down. As in, let's love each other. Let's
Yeah.
keep the peace, stop the hate.
So there's it's interesting because there's two ways to look at it, right? So one of the things you have to do, I think, is you have to realize that there's you as Grace, and then there's Grace the author, right? So sometimes you have to, you know, understand that this may be your business account, and you got to think of it as your company rather
Mhm.
than sometimes you, right? And it doesn't mean don't let the stuff affect you, don't have your opinion
Because
and
you
stuff,
can't.
but
It
sometimes,
has
yeah,
that effect.
sometimes you have to just remember this is my business account, right? And maybe you make a separate one, you're like, this one I do whatever I want, but again, it can still
It always comes
overlap,
back.
right?
It
And
always.
but it's hard. I may not be the right person to answer it because I'm a Capricorn and we're very good at compartmentalizing things, right? So I can put something away. It can affect me. It can really piss me off, but I can put it away as I'm doing something for later, right?
Mhm.
And do
Well,
it in
that's
a
because
different way or
we.
do it separately. But not everybody can do that, and I don't expect everybody to be able to do that. So I guess my greatest advice is just always remember this is your business account, right? And you don't want to change who you are. You don't want to not be who you are internally, right? You don't want to nurture what your soul's telling you to do, but you always have to be aware that for good or bad, there's always, you know, an equal reaction for an action, right?
Mhm.
And it could be completely unwarranted, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it is what it is. So
Do
you
you
just have
know?
to make, yeah.
Do you know author Dan Altore?
I don't think so. I
He
don't.
he is another. He's a best-selling author, also a friend of mine. And he said, because I asked him the same question, I believe, once, and he said, stay away from it.
Yeah.
Well, not in so many words, but initially that's what he meant. To stay away from it because we're authors, we're writers, we just leave that. Don't He doesn't deal with it, doesn't so basically not to just focus on books and your writing and
But you
market
could
that,
still, yeah.
which makes sense.
Yeah.
But it's
But the thing is,
absolutely.
you can still honor your soul and how you feel by doing stuff outside of that
Mm,
supports your cause,
being engaged,
that
yeah.
does what you want to do, whatever that could be, by not I don't want to say hurting because it's not the right word, because you're not hurting it because you're doing what you truly feel. You're being
Yeah.
true to yourself, right? But
Mm,
unfortunately, not everybody's going to feel that way, right?
yeah.
So you can still make a difference by doing stuff in the background,
And
right?
it's really not so much as doing something, but more of an opinion,
Yeah,
having an opinion. You, unfortunately, as an, not just authors, but maybe even all the people that are seen or heard or, have I want to say followers, readers, loved ones, whatever you want to call them. If you voice your opinion in the wrong way, let's just say I have an opinion, and my opinion is this: there should not be what's happening. It should be stopped. There should be an immediate ceasefire because for humanitarian reasons. There are children there. If I say that, a lot of people will be like, well, no, because of whatever, you know what I mean? Whereas I see it from a point as just stop the hate. Just, it might not be realistic, not in this world, unfortunately. But that's just how I feel. So even voicing your opinion on a matter like so important to you, even voicing your opinion can get you into
Yeah.
an issue you don't
I mean,
want to be in. So
just
that's
take,
why,
yeah, just take, I don't know the ones involved, but just take, some of the recent stuff on Book Talk News where you had some of the male people that were found out to be doing stuff that just, it's just ridiculous. And the ones that voiced it or the ones that said something were getting attacked by others, right? And it's, again, it's ridiculous. You have your own opinion. You don't need to be attacked for it because you were not at fault, right? You didn't do anything.
right.
And supporting somebody that was, that has had something happen to them shouldn't be something that gets you, attacked or gets you harassed for the same thing. But like you said, it's the world we live
All we
in,
can do
and
is,
it's going to happen.
for sure, and all I can do is, if I, in terms of book talk, I have a book talker on here. Her name is Heather Christine. I don't know if you've
Yeah, yeah, I
is
have
an
her too. Yeah,
amazing person. I am so grateful
yeah,
I got to meet her. It was a great day.
she's the best. Yeah,
She's amazing. I love her content. So down to earth, so just a beautiful person. Well, she went through when the whole book, there's always drama on Book Talk, but
yeah,
there was an incident and she wasn't really involved, but she, in one way or another, was trying to protect the authors. So when I saw, all you can do as someone who doesn't want to engage, has nothing to do with it, you can reach out to the people that are hurt.
yeah,
Like Heather Christine, like I did. I said, I hate seeing you like this, and what can I do? That's just me.
yeah. I did the same thing with her. I talked to her
Yeah,
behind the scenes
that
and
was
said, "Don't,
insane.
you didn't do anything. Don't worry about it. You did not do anything.
You're fine. And
Don't
she's
feel
such
bad."
a sweet soul,
Yeah,
such a sweet person that she was like, when I saw that video of her face, I'm like,
yeah,
it hurt to see her that way, because she's such a good person. And so that's all you can do is reach out to the people that are, I want to say victims, or, and make sure that you're there for them. That,
yeah,
hey, I'm here for you. And that goes the same thing with, because I want to shift away from all the negative, that goes the same thing with other authors that we were talking about, supporting them, like the group that you have, share, repost,
yeah,
and whether it's on here or on any other app, is supporting. So, but here's the thing, Adrian, and I think you know what I'm talking. I find that when an author is seen a lot, like, so if I come across your videos, and I think you noticed recently, I've been liking your stories
yeah,
because I see stories, not really videos, but the more an author is seen, the more they're regarded as less important. Does that make sense? Does it make sense to you?
I understand what you're saying.
And that's actually, it makes sense because the more important you are, the more things you have to do, the more, the busier you are or whatever. But no, I like to make the time
Yeah.
to share. And so what? So what if I'm seen again and again and again? Does that person become less important?
No,
I've heard yes.
everybody.
I've heard the answer yes. Somebody said,
Well, yeah.
unfortunately,
I
yes.
mean, it's very similar to a group of people that go to a restaurant because nobody knows it, right? Nobody goes there, and it's your restaurant, and then it's seen on TV or the news, and it gets popular, and then they hate it. They go, "Oh, this restaurant's horrible." It's the same restaurant, but the fact that more people know about it, more people see it. It's not our restaurant anymore. It's not our little special thing.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's people, right? People
Yeah.
sometimes have the weirdest way of thinking about things and looking at things, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do to get around that, unfortunately, right? It is what it
Mm.
is. But you made a good point in terms of the authors and the heart of a lot of indie authors.
Mhm.
But that, really it's because, you know, we do this because we love it, right? We're doing
Mhm.
this because it's something that nurtures our soul and our heart. We're not doing this because we get paid a lot. We're not doing this because it's our sole income, because, for a huge majority, it's not, right? You're just getting enough to pay for your next cover or pay for your next editing, hopefully, right? Sometimes not even that, but
Right.
hopefully, right?
Right.
So you're doing it because you truly love it. You
Love it.
truly want to do it. And that's for me. I've always like, why wouldn't I want to support that? Why wouldn't I want to help somebody that's doing something they truly love, right? It's not a business for all of us. It's something we just want to do. We
Yeah.
want to be able to write. We want to be able to tell stories. We want to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you support that, right? Why
With the
why
bare
wouldn't you
minimum
get behind that?
sometimes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. So it can be, I mean, it's hard, but because I have, and same with you, the passion that we have for writing, for expressing yourself in the story, um, it doesn't matter. Some, like you said, sometimes your books won't, I don't know what that, but you still do it.
Yeah.
You still do it, regardless of the drama on Book Talk, uh, whatever your books are making, editors telling you to rewrite or to do this or whatever, you still do it.
Hmm.
So sometimes when I'm put in a situation like the one we were talking about, I try to go back to that. Sometimes I get so frustrated where it's like, I'm done. This is the last book, and then I'm like, hell no.
Yeah.
No, I can't, because try to remember what got you writing in the first time. The love of story writing, the love of creating a character. Um, when I first started writing my first book, it was essentially to create, like I said, there was a period of my time, my life where it wasn't so wonderful. I've always had, thank God, grateful for my life, always. But, with the lockdown, with everything, I wanted to create a I wanted to create a love between two people that was like no other,
Hmm.
you know? And thank God I think I did. Um, and so that always gets me, you know, that always motivates me, like to keep doing it, because there are people, Adrian, I cannot tell you how many times I've gotten emails, messages on Dreamy, on Facebook, and people will say, "You've helped me so much." Like your book, because I have a private group on there, your books have helped me in my relationship. And that's all I want. That's what keeps me going, you know?
And that's the best point, because again, we're writing these stories because we love the story. It's something we want to tell, right? And
Mhm.
you would hope others love it the same way you do,
Mhm.
because it's something you wrote from your heart, right? From your
Right.
heart and soul.
Mhm.
And it may or may not, again, and it's sometimes just because of the eyes, right? You can't get the eyes to get on there. But if you were to do this for the acknowledgments, if you were to do it for the sales, if you were to do it for everything other than for the love of it, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be
Right.
in that story. It's the connection to the reader is because of what you put in there, right? And if it
Right.
was just going through the motions and just writing it to write it, and not something you truly felt or truly meant something to you as you're putting down on paper,
Mhm.
they're not going to feel it, right? They're not going to feel it. It's because, like you said, you pulled from some experiences, you pulled from some emotions.
Mhm.
That's the connection that the readers are getting, and that's why they love it, right? And
Mhm.
that's the thing. You do it because you love it. That's why we all do it, and that's why this community is as
So
supportive
beautiful.
as it is.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely agree.
So one of the main questions I always like to ask other authors is, it's always my version of a bucket list question, right?
Mhm.
And I always like to ask, in your writing career, however long that career goes, right? And a lot of times you have a bunch of stuff already planned, a
Mhm.
bunch of things you're thinking of doing. My question is there something when you were look back on it and say, I absolutely want to make sure I did this, right? And it could be as simple as a story you thought about or a series that you thought about haven't been able to do, or it
Mhm.
could be something completely different where you're like, at some point I might want to try a screenplay or I might want to try this. Is there something? And the answer sometimes is, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it yet. But is
Mhm.
there something you think that at the end of the day you would go back and like, I really wanted to make sure I accomplished this?
That's a good question. I feel like for me, it's just to continue writing. I really don't have this long-term plan. My long-term plan is to keep writing, to not give up, keep writing,
Yeah.
because it does come with so many maybe struggles. One of the major is what is known as um, when you're blanked. What is it?
Writer's block?
Writer's block. And then when there's writer's block, I will create a scenario just to keep myself busy and not sit in front of the computer and procrastinate. But my main goal, I don't really have a bucket list, but is to continue writing. I, if anything else, I just want to keep making people happy. You know, I want to keep reaching those souls that say, "Hey, Grace, your book got me through this time, or through that time, or through." I think I'm going to make a post about it. Actually, I have the comments and all that, and but to kind of get a point out there. It's not a bucket list for me. It is more of just continuation of reaching people's lives and
Yeah.
in one way or another touching them and helping. When a book is published, and you said it best, when a book is published, sometimes you make $100 a month from that book, and sometimes you make $6,000. It does, whatever. So it's not a money thing for me, and that's why we do other work. But it is a passion for writing, and I think I've gotten so addicted, if you want, to um, that feeling of when someone says, "You've helped me so much," or "Your book has done this or this." I love that feeling. And that's
Yeah.
what keeps me going. That's my bucket list. That's all I want to do. I have had a talent manager from Midwest Talent contact me on several occasions about the first book. And I was just blown away and humbled. I don't want to talk too much about it because
Yeah.
I legally can't, but it is something that has been in the work. Like we talk about it, it's been going on ever since I started published My Mate. So I want to say for about 2 years now, or it's been in the talk, but it really doesn't really, first it was the pandemic, and then the crisis with Hollywood, the writers, and the
Yeah.
shutdown and all that. Um, but yes, I am learning. One thing that I want to do is uh, I am writing my own screenplay for a reason, but I can't really talk too much
Yeah.
about.
No, understood. But it's a good point you made on the writer's block, right? And I have a theory for writer's block, and I'm not saying it's correct, but one of the things and the good point you made is when you did have it, you went and you wrote something else, right? And
Mhm.
um, I think that reset is very important for writers to understand is don't struggle with it. Don't sit there and try to force it. Do something. Sometimes, I do poetry, so it's a lot of times I use a poetry prompt.
Mhm.
Just go do something, and sometimes that little reset, that 5-10 minute reset, you
Mhm.
come back and you can get back into it, right? But again, it's interesting because I've always felt, and again, I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm definitely not a plotter. I'm more of a pantser. And
Mhm.
really almost even when you are a plotter, the story sometimes organically grows on its own, right? It just
Mhm.
wants to go a certain direction. I've always felt to me that writer's block may be when you're trying to force your original plot and not let it organically grow. When you don't let the story go where it wants to. When a character says, I kind of want to do this, and you're like, I need you to do this. Or when you have instances where an author says, I had a character that was only supposed to be there for a page or a chapter, now they're a main character. I feel sometimes when you don't sometimes let that organically go where it wants, that's sometimes where you start getting the block because you're trying to force something that's no longer there. It doesn't
Mhm.
want to go that direction.
Mhm.
And it's just something I found. I don't know if it's correct, but I just feel that
I
that may be
absolutely
something that
agree.
sometimes,
Absolutely, because you're creating confusion.
yeah,
When you are trying to force something, just like anything else in life, everything that's forced is not, it's not going to go anywhere. Even
yeah,
if it seems like it is for a short while, it's going to end bad. Um, you're something. When I first wrote the first book, I felt like once, and it was an easy read. And if you go back, once you read My Mate, you'll see the first book in the series was an easy read. Why? Because it was essentially me introducing him to her. So there's an age gap trigger, but um, this is a girl that grew up with with the family, and she meets the bad boy
mhm,
that's a lot older, has so many, and he's the alpha. So it's essentially just them two and their problems and what they go through. Of course, like I said, there's a lot of war and espionage and um, unaliving or,
yeah,
in it, but essentially it is about their love. So it was an easy read. Now, the second book, it was a little more complicated because now there's more things, there's a lot more than just them involved. And so my third book is where I started having the writer's block issues because it was even more complicated. The story had expanded. Now the story focuses on their son. And he was just so complicated. He had so many demons because of what he went through in the second book. I I would try to bring him back from that. And it's funny, authors, because we can create what we want, but I can't at the same time. He is a character within himself, and I cannot change him. He was born this way. He has these characteristics because of certain scenes that I can't change. I can't go back and change book two. That's edited and published. It's being published, right? So you're absolutely right. I can't force him to be something he's not. And so, yes, I would get stuck on a certain scene. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Is it going to trigger people? Is it going to? Well, now I've come to a conclusion where one, you're absolutely right. You need to move away from it, do something else, and then come back to it, and that'll help. But another thing is, don't worry too much about the backlash. Don't worry about what people are going to think. Just
yeah,
write what you want to write. That'll come. It's coming either way.
yeah,
The best stories have always had the most negative reviews or comments or backlash, and some of the best and positive. So don't worry too much about what people are going to think. And I think that was my problem for book three. And that's why oh my God, I had insane writer's block.
yeah,
Because I worry too much about what people would think if he'd done it this way, if he says this, is it too dark? Well, now, especially with you being dark, 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 now since there's no level to the darkness, I'm going to write what I want. You can either
yeah,
choose to read it or not.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So, yeah, my writer's block can come from many different things. Worrying too much about what the readers are gonna think, what the people are gonna think, what my parents, what this, what are gonna. I have to stop that. I had to learn the hard way that it doesn't matter. I am old enough to write whatever I want without having to worry about X and Y and Z.
yeah. You can't worry about the reviews. I mean, there was an author, and I don't remember which author it was, that had put a post up. It was a photo talking about reviews, and she was like, Stonehenge got a 1 star review because the person said, I thought there'd be more rocks, right? And it just goes to, you can't please everybody. You just cannot please everybody. You can't even try or want to. It's just not going to happen, right? You just gotta understand that some people are just not going to appreciate it.
Yeah,
Just not. And I thought that was the greatest post because,
yeah,
what can you say? You can't say anything. It's just like 1 star. I thought there'd be more rocks in this. This is horrible.
yeah.
And
I was
it
in
is
a
what it is.
exactly. I was in a when I first. I haven't been. I've been on this app for about, I want to say, 3 years now, and um, I was I made a comment. I can't remember what it was exactly. Uh, Somebody said to like show support, and all the comment was, "Are you going to support me back?" And maybe that was wrong. I didn't mean it in any. but like I am showing all this support to your book, to your work. Are you like, could you? I asked very nicely. Oh my God, the backlash. So she was like, and I had a post up that said, please leave me a review. They went on there and took down from 5 star. Now it's like 4 or 4.5 because of the, and whatever, that's fine. But it was made for no reason. This person had never read the book, ever. But because she didn't like me saying that to her friend, she started defending. And I didn't say anything bad, I promise you. It's really not in me to go there. And she's like, you want a review? Okay, I'm gonna leave you a review. And I saw a 1 star review like the next day. So it happens. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
control, I can't control people or what they do or any more than I can control my characters.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because, the more I think about it, and sometimes when you think about your story and you think about how it organically wants to grow, it always reminds me of just everyday life in general, right? Real life.
Mhm.
And your characters in the book meet another character, or they have an experience, they have a traumatic event, they have something that happens, and they're no longer the same character, right? Something you either grew from the situation, or
Mhm.
you regress from the situation, right? Depending on what the event was, or you just happen to meet somebody by chance, and all of a sudden now you're always spending time together, your friends or whatever.
Mhm.
And just like in real life, it happens in the book, and that's sometimes if you don't honor those changes of your character and let them grow, just like any person would,
Mhm.
I think that's where you struggle. That's where sometimes you're not letting that character naturally grow where they're going to go, whatever that path is.
Right. So what do you do when you suffer with writer's blocks?
Um, like I said, I do like the reset. I use the poetry prompt just to get me out of the headset, right? Because the poetry prompt I can take anywhere I want,
Mhm.
whether it's love, loss of love, take it on the dark side again. Just the prompt. You could take it anywhere you want, so you can get
Mhm.
in a completely different headspace and just take you out of thinking about that thing.
Mhm.
But again, my influence being really, you know, horror and movies in general. The way I write is sometimes almost like I'm watching a movie, right? And a lot of times my writing, the way I take it through, is almost like I'm dictating a movie, like you're reading the captions below of
Right.
what's going on, right? And because I don't plot, because I don't really think originally what do I want to happen here, I just let it go. I sometimes don't have the problem because I'm just organically like, okay, what is going to happen now? You're just going with it. You're letting it happen, and then you go back and say, does it even make sense, right? But you just let it organically go where it wants. You let the
That's another
characters do what they want.
similarity we have. That's another because I
Yeah,
don't plot.
yeah.
I
I
don't.
can't. I mean, I couldn't. I
I
can't
write
keep
as I go.
myself restricted. I just couldn't do it.
Exactly. And that's a Capricorn thing for sure.
Yeah,
I cannot be conformed in any way. I'm an Aries. I cannot be conformed, especially not by a plot. You know what I mean? I
yeah,
can't stick to a certain, and that's why I never do well. See, on Dreamy, they have these, I want to say like competitions they do where write this, write that, right? I cannot, you can't tell me what to write. Like I'm gonna write what I want to write. So that's another similarity we have. I cannot stick to a plot. And you're absolutely right. When yeah, most of the writer's block comes from because they have that plot in mind and now they don't maybe want to stick to it because the character is going one way and the plot is pulling that way. And so yes, that could
yeah,
create some kind of problems.
yeah. I mean, I've absolutely loved this conversation, Grace. This has been
Yeah,
great.
it was more of
I
a
think we're
conversation than an
I know,
interview.
and that's why I like doing this. I don't because there's a lot of times, especially a lot of indie authors are not outgoing. A lot of times they're very internal, right? And sometimes they're just so nervous for this. And I was like, I'm not going to interview her. We're going to talk about what you love, writing
I
your
love
books.
meeting
Like we're just
people. I'm
talking
a
about it,
people's
right?
person. I love meeting people. I love interviews. I love getting on the screen. you know, so let's definitely connect outside and maybe
Yeah,
figure something out for, you know.
yeah, definitely. Like I said, I'm gonna download this. I'll edit it a little bit to get some of the stuff in the beginning and the end
Yeah.
out, and then I'll upload it on the YouTube channel. And then I'll do a repost where I'll tag you with the link to the YouTube, so people who
Hmm.
only watch some of this or who weren't able to watch it, they can go back and check it out. But
Hmm.
yeah, let's definitely talk separately on this. And you're always welcome to come back on when you have time and you want to talk about anything. You're always welcome to come back on.
Sure. Sure.
But
Thank
I've
you.
absolutely loved this. I appreciate
You
everybody
too.
that's watched and gone
Yeah.
through with us here. And yeah, I truly do appreciate it. I want to thank you for coming on.
I enjoyed this very much. I feel like I know it. You've known you for forever. And any
It's
chance
the
I get
werewolf.
to,
It's the
it's the
pack.
Google thing. Yeah. Any chance I get to, you know, meet new people and readers and other authors, I love that. So yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. It was a great opportunity. I had so much fun.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, thank you everybody for watching. And I'll let you guys know when I got the link up on YouTube.
Mhm.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, guys.